Hello everyone, today I want to talk about the new upcoming character Furina, or the Hydro Archon Focalors, and hopefully help you figure out if she fits your playstyle and team compositions, so ultimately if this character is worth your wishes. First I will go over her skill kit and talk about some gameplay or build ideas, and in the later half I'll get into synergies with other characters and team compositions. Her normal attacks aren't anything too special, though her charge attack is important. After using it, Furina will change between two states, which influence her elemental skill. This one summons some minions who, based on said state, either heal your active character or attack opponents. The damage of these summons is also increased for each character in your team above 50% HP, and every time they attack they will drain some of your HP. Also, while the skill is active, Furina can walk on water. The burst skill does some damage, and for its duration the current HP of your party members is tracked, and whenever a character in your team gains or loses 1% of their HP, Furina gains 1 fanfare point, stacking up to a maximum of 300. At skill level 10, 300 points translates to a 75% damage bonus, so it's a massive buff. For passives, the first one decreases cooldown of underwater abilities, the second one allows Furina to redirect overhealing on your active character to an injured character off-field as long as the initial healing source isn't Furina herself. And the last one increases damage and healing done of the elemental skill based on Furina's max HP, which I believe caps out at 40,000 HP. Alright, who would have guessed that the Hydro Archon would be the healer out of the 7, but the surprising thing to me is she has a lot of synergy with other sources of healing in her skill kit. Furina is all about managing the HP total of everyone, which makes her playstyle very dependent on her team composition. She can either be dedicated to the role of healer herself, but maybe even more effectively you can decide to not heal with her at all and let another character do it, which is also something suggested by her second passive skill. Again, if your active character has full HP and catches a heal by any character but Furina herself, it will be redirected to another injured character in your team. In general, I expect Furina to do damage most of the time, she also seems to hit fairly hard, and right before pressing Furina's burst, your team should ideally be somewhat hurt, so after the fact you can immediately start ramping up her damage buff by dishing out some heals. That's like the main idea of this character. To achieve the 300 fanfare points, you have to shift your team's total HP by 300%. As example, if everyone in your team is at 25% HP and you press Jean's or Barbara's burst to get everybody back to full HP instantly, you get your 300 fanfare points right away. You just healed 4 characters for 75% each, which totals up to 300. Baiju's elemental skill can kind of do the same, what a coincidence that his banner's up at the same time. To be fair, that's a little bit of a niche scenario, you usually probably have to account for some ramp up time similar to Yelan's buff. Also keep in mind that losing HP will also feed fanfare points to Furina. You can probably min-max this process for every possible team composition in a different way. One last very important detail, at first my assumption was that this buff just works for your on-field character, but in the skill description it de facto says that this buff applies to all nearby party members. So there is a chance that it works for your entire team, which honestly would be a little ridiculous. As for the build, her stat line just looks like a regular HP scaling sub DPS. For the weapon, same thing as Raiden, go fishing and you will get your tailor-made weapon for the Archon of that region. And artifacts, the obvious choice is Golden Troop for damage, though if you choose to mainly heal and buff with Furina, something like a Noblesse set might be more valuable in those niche situations. For example, thinking of some Linny team without Bennett. Speaking of teams, in a way it's very simple. Similar to Zhongli, I believe that Furina can fit almost any team. This doesn't mean that she will always be the best option, but more like she will never be bad. Good off-field damage, hydro application and a general damage buff is just something anyone can benefit of. Now as for some standout synergy, it's mainly about teams who allow fanfare points to be generated fast and easy. Dropping HP is one option, so Furina's burst into Hu Tao's or Shinobu's elemental skill instantly generates a lot of points, and thinking in the other direction, healing works. Baiju, Jean, Bennett, Kokomi, the list goes on, technically even Xingqiu, there's quite a lot there. Also, a lot of the new Fontaine characters have fluctuating HP mechanics. Novelette, Risley or Linny all drop HP and heal back up like crazy, so this is obviously really good for synergy with Furina. But even with other characters, she can be great if you adapt your rotations to the teams. Keep in mind, Furina only needs to generate 160 points to get her buff up to 40%, in other words, to be as effective as a fully maxed out Kazuha. To give you a concrete example, here are some freeze team variations. Assuming you took some hits and your whole team is kind of dying, you switch to Furina, use her skills and keep her in damage mode, switch to Shane, use her skills which will activate the freeze, and then switch to Jean, press her skills which will generate a lot of fanfare points by healing, and swirl Cryo for the Viridescent set. And then you unleash a big burst skill on Ayaka with all those buffs. On the other hand, you can also replace Jean with Kazuha and make Furina heal as you rotate through your entire team to generate some fanfare points, and after you send Ayaka's burst, you switch the Archon back to damage mode. And the last thing to mention is Furina summons attack unconditionally, so if you were sad about not being able to play Ganyu and Yelan together, then now you have Furina. So again, the limiting factor here is not necessarily the teams, but how well you adapt Furina's playstyle around them. Again, she can fit almost anywhere. The same reasoning from Ganyu teams also applies to quickswap teams, teams that just spam skills and never really get to do normal attacks. A character like Yelan or Jingshi wouldn't really work well there, Furina does though. For example, I like to play Hyper Bloom teams with Yae Miko, Nahida and Kokomi. Furina would be a nice fit there. To wrap it up, I'd like to mention one exception though. If you have a team which is dealing like 90% of their damage with transformative reactions, Furina's damage buff isn't super valuable. For example, Baiju, Kokomi and Shinobi teams can deal a lot of damage with just Hyper Bloom, but the actual character skill damage isn't very impressive, and the same is true for some Nilo teams. To be fair, this is very nitpicky. Furina still has Hydro application and good personal damage. It's not all about the buff, and she will likely still outclass Kokomi there, but if I had to point out one weakness, it would be this. Alright, we made it to the end. This video was a little longer than I would have liked it to be, but the same thing can be said about Furina's skill descriptions. So my main goal here was to make sure to explain what she actually does and how to work with that, rather than just going through the endless number of teams one by one. Hopefully I did a decent job at that. Anyway, I will get her and test her, so stay tuned for that. Until then, have fun and bye bye.